Lumos. Wizards and witches alike speak of the Death Eaters in hushed tones, servants of Voldemort, the Dark Lord, and torchbearers of a terrifying ideology that threatened the very heart of the magical world. But who were these individuals beneath the black masks and dark marks? Were they all monsters? Or simply lost souls seduced by power, fear, and bloodline pride? Let's dive into the backstories of some of the most notorious, and some lesser-known, Death Eaters, and their ties to the elite Great 28 families. What were the Death Eaters? Death Eaters were followers of Lord Voldemort, united under a vision of blood purity, domination over Muggles, and absolute loyalty to their master. While many were from old, pure-blood wizarding families, not all were born into power. Some clawed their way in through cruelty, cunning, or fear. Voldemort used them as soldiers, spies, executioners, and enforcers. Their names were rarely spoken, but their actions were never forgotten. Meet the Inner Circle. Twisted histories and dark loyalties. Alecto and Amicus Caro. These sibling sadists were poster children for cruelty. Alecto, particularly fervent about Muggle hatred, and Amicus, a brute by every definition, thrived under Voldemort's regime. During the Second Wizarding War, they were installed as professors at Hogwarts, Alecto teaching Muggle studies, read propaganda, and Amicus tormenting students under the guise of discipline. Think Dolores Umbridge, but without the cat plates and with a penchant for Cruciatus curses. Barty Crouch Jr. Once the golden boy of a high-ranking ministry official, Barty's descent into darkness was swift and shocking. After falling under Voldemort's spell, figuratively and literally, he joined the Death Eaters and participated in the torture of the Longbottoms. He later impersonated Mad-Eye Moody for an entire school year. Bonus twist. He did it so convincingly, he actually taught Harry and his classmates valuable defense against the dark arts. Antonin Dolohov. Dolohov was a killer, plain and simple. One of Voldemort's original followers, he was instrumental in many of the First War's most violent acts. He was responsible for the death of Gideon and Fabian Prewett, Molly Weasley's brothers, and his penchant for a non-verbal curse that causes internal injuries makes him one of the most feared in Voldemort's ranks. Fenrir Greyback. Not technically a Death Eater, he never bore the dark mark, but Voldemort's favourite werewolf certainly earns a spot. Fenrir delighted in turning children, especially of enemies, into werewolves, spreading lycanthropy like a dark gospel. His loyalties were to chaos and carnage more than ideology. Igor Karkaroff. Once a Death Eater, always a Death Eater. Not quite. Karkaroff turned snitch to save his own skin during the trials after the First Wizarding War. As the headmaster of Durmstrang, he kept the school's dark arts-friendly traditions alive. But when Voldemort returned, he ran. It didn't help. His body was later found in a shack, the dark mark burned onto his arm. Bellatrix Lestrange. The Queen of Madness and Voldemort's most fanatical follower. Bellatrix was born into the Black family and married into the Lestranges, two of the Great 28. She was vicious, sadistic, and terrifyingly loyal to the Dark Lord. She tortured Neville's parents, murdered Sirius Black, and cackled her way through both wars. Her last word? Probably a laugh. Lucius and Draco Malfoy. Lucius was Voldemort's suave right hand during the First War, using wealth and influence more than brute force. When the tide turned, he claimed to be under the Imperius Curse. During the Second War, he fell from grace. Fast. Draco was roped in as a teen and tasked with killing Dumbledore, but his hesitancy showed there might still be a soul in the Malfoy heir. Peter Pettigrew. Wormtail, the Rat. Betrayer of friends, and proud recipient of Voldemort's favour, until he outlived his usefulness. Once a Gryffindor and friend to James Potter, Sirius Black, and Remus Lupin, Peter's fear drove him into Voldemort's arms. He enabled the Dark Lord's return and paid with his life, killed by his own silver hand for a moment of mercy. Corbin Yaxley. A high-ranking Death Eater during the Second War, Yaxley infiltrated the Ministry of Magic as head of magical law enforcement. He embodied the bureaucratic side of Voldemort's regime. A pencil pusher with a penchant for totalitarianism. Severus Snape. Ah, the double agent. Snape is the most complex figure in the Death Eater ranks. A former Slytherin, bullied at school and drawn to dark magic, Snape joined the Death Eaters young. But his love for Lily Potter and guilt over her death led him to Dumbledore's side. His espionage kept Harry alive and ultimately helped win the war, at the cost of his own life. The rest of the Shadows. Other Death Eaters include Avery, Evan Rosier, killed by Aurors, Regulus Arcturus Black, Sirius's brother turned traitor to Voldemort, Crabbe, Goyle, Jugson, Gibbon, Thorfinn Roll, Travers, Wilkes, Augustus Rookwood, a spy at the Department of Mysteries, Walden McNair, executioner with a thirst for blood, Mulciber Fawn II, not Selwyn and Peter. Yes, again, still a rat. Some, like Mr. and Mrs. Fowler, Mr. and Mrs. Lee, and Mr. and Mrs. Snide, remain enigmatic, more like whispered names in ministry files than developed characters. The Great 28, purity, power, and prejudice. The Sacred 28, or the Great 28, was a list compiled in the 1930s, allegedly by a mysterious figure or group seeking to identify the last remaining pureblood families in Britain. Think of it as the Wizarding World's version of an aristocratic registry, equal parts who's who, and you should know better than to marry a muggle. While blood purity was once a point of pride, by the 1990s, many saw the Great 28 as outdated, snobbish, or outright dangerous. Some families embraced the title like a badge of honor, while others vehemently rejected it. Here's a closer look at these influential lineages, some sinister, some noble, all important. The Dark Devotees, Death Eaters in the Great 28. Several of Voldemort's most loyal Death Eaters hailed from these ancient families. Black, toujours pur, always pure, was more than just a motto. It was a way of life. This house produced the likes of Bellatrix, Narcissa, and Regulus, but also Sirius, who rebelled against their bigotry. Lestrange, obsessed with purity, fiercely loyal to Voldemort. The family line eventually died out due to intermarriage and war. Malfoy, rich, cunning, and politically powerful. Lucius embodied aristocratic superiority, until Voldemort made it clear who was really in charge. Rosier. Evan Rosier died fighting Aurors. The family was old, proud, and one of Voldemort's earliest backers. Yaxley, Corbin Yaxley, brought bureaucracy and cruelty together as a ministry infiltrator under Voldemort. Selwyn, not much is known, but the Selwyn name carried weight and was often used by Death Eaters for credibility. The middle ground? Traditional, but not terrible. These families weren't explicitly aligned with Voldemort, but their obsession with blood status often made them complicit in the system he exploited. Avery, one of Voldemort's early recruits. The Avery family had a reputation for wealth and a slightly slimy tendency to slip away from consequences. Nott. Theo Nott's father was a Death Eater, but Theo himself was a quiet, intelligent Slytherin with no known involvement. Crabbe and Goyle, more brawn than brains, their families backed Voldemort in both wars, though they were never part of the inner circle. Travers, involved in the murder of Marlene McKinnon. This family kept close to Voldemort's cause, but remained shadowy and secretive. The Redeemers, purity in blood, not in belief. A few families from the Great 28 proved that noble lineage didn't mean noble prejudice. Weasley, though pure blood, the Weasleys were blood traitors in the eyes of supremacists. Arthur's passion for Muggle life and the family's warmth made them Voldemort's ideological opposites. Longbottom, old and proud, yes, but also fiercely loyal to the Order of the Phoenix. the torture of Frank and Alice Longbottom became a rallying cry for the fight against Death Eaters. Shacklebolt included in some extended versions of the list. Kingsley became Minister for Magic and represented a new future for wizard kind. Prewett, the brave and loyal Gideon and Fabian Prewett, Molly Weasley's brothers, died fighting Death Eaters. The rest of the Sacred 28. Not all members of the Great 28 had major roles in the series, but they remain part of the tapestry. Abbott, Black, Bulstrode, Burke, Carrow, Crouch of Fawley, Flint, Gaunt. The last of the line was Tom Riddle, aka Voldemort. Enough said. Greengrass, Macmillan, Montague, Ollivander, Parkinson, Rahl, Shafiq, Shacklebolt. Debatably. Slughorn, Travers, Yaxley. Some families faded due to time, war, or lack of heirs. Others adapted, letting go of the old ways, or pretending to. Bloodlines and burdens. The Great 28 represent the collision of ancestry and ideology. While the list was supposed to honor purity, it ultimately revealed the dangers of clinging to a myth. Many of Voldemort's followers were obsessed with preserving this illusion of superiority, using it as justification for horrors. But the wizarding world moved on. Hogwarts became a place where blood didn't matter, and even the most ancient lineages had to reckon with change. The Death Eaters weren't just villains, they were reflections of fear, fanaticism, and failure. Some were born into darkness, others chose it. The Great 28, with all their privilege and pride, created fertile ground for Voldemort's message. In the end, it wasn't just spells and wands that shaped the war. It was the choices each of these characters made. So next time you reread the series, keep an eye on the shadows. The real monsters often wear masks, and sometimes they wear familiar faces. Nox!